on the
Invite to
DAODAO
speak.
squad.
All right. And maybe while we're getting just launched here, I'll just give a quick hello. This is Dave Fortson, everybody with Regen Network. Just wanted to make sure you all, anyone headed to ETH Denver, make sure you find us. We'll be present with an event on March 2nd. It's called Regeneration. We're doing in coordination with the Climate Coordination Network, CCN, from the ETH community. So looking forward to rolling with them for a day. It's over at Bigsby Folly, which I think we had a Cosmos event there last year, so that was fun. And we'll also be, obviously floating around ETH Denver and going to the variety of Cosmos events as well. So really looking forward to seeing fellow cosmonauts and other friends in the Web3 space. So hit me up in DMs. You can just DM the Regen Twitter if you have something going that you want to share, or if you want to get more info about our event on March 2nd. But otherwise, I want to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Sarah Baxendale, and her merry band of governance geeks to dig into the wonderful world of DAODAO and the emerging and blossoming partnership between Regen Network and DAODAO, and really supercharging the power of Web3 governance as one of the most exciting and important developments, in this space. So, Sarah Baxendale, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, good morning to everyone listening. I like what you just said, Dave, the merry band of governance geeks. That made my heart really flutter a little bit. So that makes me smile. A little bit. I see Jake's reaction and knows. Yeah, so for folks who tuned in to Twitter Spaces last week, we talked to Robert and Giancarlo, who are the contractors working to do the implementation and the audit for Regen Network's Cosmos SDK upgrade from 046 to 050, and we're dropping Cosmosm on the chain. When all of that stuff is said and done, we will have the ability to adopt a number of different smart contracts and existing applications like DAODAO onto Regen to actually be able to do a lot more than is currently available with just the Regen Network marketplace stack and the eco-crediting system. So we today have up here Jake and Noah and Cause Harm from DAODAO. And we are going to talk just a little bit about kind of like what is DAODAO, who in Regen Network might use DAODAO, what are some of the features of DAODAO, and the Regen Network Growth DAO has approved a grant of some regen to basically Noah and Cause Less Harm and Sari, who used to be our community manager, to work on building out documentation for DAODAO, because there is some documentation and some that isn't there. So we're kind of working collaboratively between our crews to try to get more of that ready, so that when DAODAO launches on Regen and other DAODAO users want to figure out how to use DAODAO, the docs are there. So I think to start, maybe what I'll do is I'll let either Jake or Noah just like pop on and tell us what is DAODAO. And Dave, if we could maybe bring up Sari from the audience, because she's part of the project, that would also be super dope. So
Got it.
Jake or Noah, what the heck is DAODAO?
Jake, take it away.
DAODAO is many things these days, but I think at its heart, it's just a bunch of governance Lego blocks. You can put together these Lego blocks to create all sorts of different types of organizational flows, and really just run your nonprofit, your regenerative agriculture project, your protocol, your entire blockchain, and even someday real world businesses on chain using amazing UI and tooling that makes it super easy. Did you know that you can instantiate vesting contracts, that you can make NFTs all without knowing how to code? Well, we make that kind of stuff possible. So yeah, DAODAO at the end of the day is just UI for governance, and you can vote on things. We have single choice proposals, multiple choice proposals, And there's just a wonderful no-code UI for doing anything you want across the interchain. I guess the interchain point is also really an important aspect of DAODAO. It is not just DAO tooling, it's not just governance tooling, it's interchain DAO tooling. And so you can seamlessly operate across this wonderful network of IBC connected chains. Maybe you have a DAO on Regen and you want to swap something on Osmosis. You can create an interchain account on Osmosis and actually use DAODAO apps and use the Osmosis app directly to do a swap or provide liquidity. We also have just a ton of features to talk about. But yeah, that's kind of the TLDR. DAODAO is interchain DAO tooling. It allows you to seamlessly do a ton of things across the interchain without knowing how to code.
Awesome. So in the context of Regen Network, the kind of quasi-DAO tooling that we have right now is the groups module, which is a Cosmos SDK module, which from trying to use for the growth DAO has very, very limited features. So I'm excited about DAODAO because there are lots of things I would like to be able to do, like have one proposal that can send multiple transactions to different people, as well as have different subgroups having basically control over certain decisions. And a lot of these things become possible when we have DAODAO. So I'm wondering, if just to try to ground this abstract thing of DAO tooling, I know that, you all have talked to, for example, some of the folks at Regen Foundation about some of the ways in which people might use DAO tooling. I know that you have also got lots of people that are already using DAODAO outside of Regen Network. Could you give us a couple examples of just existing use cases that are real to give people an idea of the way that people are using this DAO tooling, and also kind of just tell people where do you find DAODAO in the world?
Well, I can take the first part of that question. Some of our earliest users are blockchains themselves. So Juno Network, Neutron, all use DAODAO as a core part of their governance and their decentralized operations. We have this feature called sub-DAOs, which are effectively groups that are accountable to the main DAO. And you can have sub-DAOs of sub-DAOs of sub-DAOs. It's really cool. So, the whole Juno Network charter, for example, is implemented in DAODAO, and it's a pretty complex governance system with checks and balances. DAODAO is using DAODAO for their next iteration. That's really cool. They're actually leveraging some of our very unique features like veto and the approval flow, so that you can actually have say a Guernsey trust that and a DAO structure that completely matches what's on paper for that legal structure. So they use the approval flow. So they make a proposal, and then the Guernsey trustees can look over that proposal, make sure it's not violating any money laundering rules or whatever, and then they can approve it, and it happens automatically. So we've definitely seen a lot of chains use it for just governing their communities, and having things like grant orgs and other types of chain related orgs that are ultimately accountable to the main DAO. And I think that there's a lot that Regen can benefit from that. I think there was talk of an ambassador program at some point, right? And you could have the main Regen DAO have a sub DAO for this ambassador program. You could then use that to that sub DAO to run an ambassador program and utilize a bunch of other really cool features like DAODAO's retroactive rewards, which we can talk about more about later. And so we've seen a really huge usage in terms of chains using DAODAO for structuring all their different operations. We also have a lot of protocols starting to use DAODAO. Lavana, Mars Protocol has reached out. We're talking with them. BitGo is actually using DAODAO to manage WBTC deployment on Osmosis, which is a really cool use case to see. And so we've definitely seen a lot of protocols adopt DAODAO for basically just governing and running their protocol. We're starting to see, and I hope we see a lot more of this with this Regen deployment, is we're starting to see also a lot of like real world use cases, and this is I think what gets the DAODAO team like really excited. We're very stoked about like real world things that actually make a difference, and some groups are starting to use DAODAO for running businesses or nonprofits or events and things like that. That's some of the many use cases. At the end of the day, it's governance tooling, and it's tooling for communities to like better organize and run themselves and carry out their operations. So, there's basically like an endless amount of stuff that you can use DAODAO for. We've had some great chats with like Austin and Will Gardner about like different types of regen communities that can leverage DAODAO. So we're looking at a stream cleanup project, which is going to be like leveraging DAODAO to incentivize people to clean up a stream using retroactive rewards. We're very excited about that. They've got a couple other projects in the pipeline, and ultimately giving tools like to communities for them to self-organize and perform their mission is a really powerful thing to do, and we're just could not be more excited about it. I think in terms of other ways DAODAO can be leveraged in Regen Network is even using DAODAO for like processes around these climate methodologies or these eco credit methodologies, and being able to make those seamless and very easy to use, like governing methodologies, processes for issuing new eco credits. Like there's a lot to do. So I don't want to talk too much, but maybe Noah or Cosmos Harm has some more things to add.
It sounds like you're standing in the middle of a street the entire time.
I actually am standing in the middle of a street in New York. So
in New York, that actually totally checks out. Yeah, I mean, you said it pretty well. The biggest like communities that we see besides blockchains are like a lot of NFT, like art-centered communities of like artists creating NFTs or just people buying into the community and participating for fun. I think what's really exciting about our partnership with Regen is that we're really going to bridge this into the real world and do things that like need these, modern advanced types of governance structures, but for the meat space for human world. So we're really stoked to just start exploring all of that. And we've been like really getting a awesome battle testing with all of our blockchain users, and that's amazing. And that's really important. And when we're interacting with things in meat space, things are going to get a lot more like security critical in a way. Like once it starts really affecting people's lives is when we need it to be safe. So it's a good time after we've had a couple of years of like really rapid experimentation to start this. Dave, do you have anything? Oh, there's multiple Daves. Oops.
Nope, nothing here. Please carry on. Bax?
Yeah, I was going to just sort of like recap as to sort of some of the bullet points of the ways that we're going to be able to use DAODAO. So I think that there was just a new user interface released that allows for, all the voting general blockchain users of Regen to basically see like, all the governance proposals that relate to the chain, which is super great. And so we're going to be able to do sort of like chain discussion and chain voting on DAODAO. We're also going to be able to allow people to explore the governing of the eco-credit methodologies if they choose to use the DAODAO tooling versus the groups module, which is where many of those crediting standards are currently being governed. And since groups module is very limited to just sort of voting or administrative wallet establishment, the ability to have discussions and make more subgroup decisions will be an expanded set of features on DAODAO. I know that also the growth DAO that I'm running with Sari and Giancarlo and others, we're going to use DAODAO particularly just to create sub DAOs for all the different projects so that the people that are actually working on the projects and being paid to be a part of the projects or administering the projects can be the ones that make the decisions about those projects. So I'm super excited to get a big sub DAO complex structure set up for the work that we're doing. And then, there are all of these fantastic use cases of the actual projects and nonprofits on the ground. You know, when you run an ecological nonprofit, which, you know, I did for 7 years before joining Regen Network, there's a lot of decisions with boards. There's a lot of decisions about programs. There's a lot of decisions just frankly around like what kind of tree you want to plant in the park. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us to think about the pattern of use cases using all this DAO tooling. And a big part of why we wanted to get a grant project here going, so we have sort of a doc sprint over the next month, is I am assuming that we're going to have to sort of like boot camp a lot of the existing Regen Network users, not because they can't figure out DAODAO on their own. It's actually really intuitive. More than it's just an opportunity for the community to come together and to think about all the ways that decision-making tooling can actually support their projects and support their project decision-making processes, and allow them to really dig into asking questions about their governance structures and their program committees and all the kind of like real world stuff that normal nonprofits or environmental projects are already doing in their organizations. The use of DAODAO would allow them just to kind of like, you know, anchor that in a place where it will be a public record, which is definitely a different layer of decision making, making that publicly accessible. So our goal starting, you know, this month is really to kind of have a little bit of Regen Network folks weighing in on what features we think that the community is likely to use on DAODAO, and then partnering together with the DAODAO team to make sure there's a guide for most of the basic features. Because we're assuming people are going to hop on there when it's available. They're going to want to start to dig in. And we want to make sure that at least a significant layer of the basic, how the heck do I do this, is there. Because we know that the difference in the Regen Network communities are that they are not necessarily blockchain first or blockchain native communities. So this is really in some ways a different like psychology of users, because these are small nonprofits, these are family farms, these are scientists, and a lot of these people are going to want to use the tooling because it allows them to have governance processes, but you know, their blockchain relationship is often limited to their getting a Regen wallet to govern a credit standard, or getting a Regen wallet in order to, you know, participate in the endowments, Regen endowment program. But they are not like necessarily fancy DeFi users, or ever having, you know, they may not know what an NFT is, for example. So it's a very different type of human with a very different set of learning needs. And so we're going to be kind of working together to, and we've interviewed, you know, Austin from the foundation, and, you know, been thinking amongst ourselves with what the use cases are, from, you know, me and Sari's relationship to the real world users, having worked with the project for many years. And our goal is really just to try to make it more accessible and try to be prepared that if we want to do webinars and onboarding and boot camp and that kind of stuff, that, you know, we have basically like the ammunition to make that process organized and possible and accessible for many people. So I'm feeling very excited about the data, and also the fact that we're going to get documentation together is really going to like lower the barrier to entry to using this type of tooling, because it is really, really expansive. So I wanted to take maybe a chance to maybe pop this over to Noah and cause less harm if you're still around. Yeah, you are. Looks like we lost Jake anyways.
I think his mic is having issues, causeless harms.
Oh, okay, that's too bad. Yeah. Well, it's you and I then, Noah, because looks like we lost Jake in the Great New York.
Yeah, I hope he didn't get hit by a car.
I'm sure he's fine. He's an adult.
I forgot.
But maybe you could tell us about where you started, Noah, with the documentation a month or so ago, and we could kind of dig in a little bit into sort of like what's already there, and what's sort of like our pathway of the stuff that we're going to fill in the gaps for together.
Yeah. So causeless harm has mostly been tackling the documentation, but I got like just a few like of the basic functions, like how do you send tokens and how do you make an account on another chain so you can stake your tokens there. How do you, add members? What are the different types of DAOs, and why would you might want to use one or the other? It's very like dense reading, which is why I think the videos that Causeless Harm is making are going to be super helpful in that regard. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this guide is just like, how do you vote? What even is a DAO? Like, you should be able to send it to your mom and like hope she can, join your DAO and work on it with you. So it's an ambitious goal because we're building like really an advanced tool for the cosmos. And so I'm really excited for this work that we're doing that will hopefully translate it into the normal human, which is who we really want to build this for. Like we want DAODAO to power neighborhoods and communities, and those are not going to be crypto natives. Hopefully, they don't even know they're using crypto. Hopefully they have a wallet built into their iPhone, and then they just like interact with the app like it's any other website. Yeah, so let's see how close we can get to that vision.
And Noah's been working super hard on making the design of DAODAO just incredibly easy to use. Like the mobile UI is looking fantastic. We just did a huge redesign, so now you can just use DAODAO on your phone, and it's super. It's better than ever. It's like
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Yeah, I think that
because
was critical, that redesign. Like, I think 2 weeks ago, Dada was probably not usable for like the average human, and I think this, like, we just moved things around really and made the tabs and buttons look a bit more like you'd expect a mobile app to look like, and it has a dock at the bottom, so you like know where you can go at all times. With just like an easy search button, you can just find your DAO if you ever get lost. Um, yeah, I think, and yeah, yeah, I'm excited for that. I think that'll really help.
And some other things we have is social logins too. So, if you have like some new users and they're like, what is a wallet? How do I get one? How do I choose all these different wallets? How do I set it up? What is a seed phrase? Like, well, for a lot of those people, they can actually just use DAODAO and they can use their Apple ID, log in with their, face or whatever. They can, use their Google account or their Twitter. And so it makes it really easy to onboard people to DAODAO without necessarily having to know about wallets and things like that.
That feels like that'll be a bit game changing for the users of Regen because although some of them have Regen wallets and have sort of jumped over that initial hurdle, a lot of them actually, really are just like used to logging into Google because they're nonprofits. A lot of them are folks that are a little bit older or a little bit more scientific. And so being able to just sort of like log in like a normal person that has nothing to do with blockchain is going to be really a barrier to entry being significantly lowered.
Yeah, there is a step there that they're gonna need to get like, tokens to pay fees on the chain. Um, but I think, there could be some like faucet or maybe the DAO like itself kind of there should be like some program, I think, for giving like setting people up with new wallets and like maybe verifying their identity or something. I don't know exactly how that would work, but yeah, the critical step there is that need to have some fee tokens.
Well, that is good that we're bringing that up because maybe the Growth DAO and Regen Foundation can work to sort of have some sort of a tap system where when we know people are going to go use DAO, that if they don't already have tokens, that they'll be able to get some. A lot of the folks that are participants under the Regen Foundation endowment, they already have tokens. General voters have tokens, so we'll have to look for all of our outliers along the way here. I am wondering, we have a number of folks in the audience that are participants in actual projects. We have Will from the foundation. Looks like we have Regen Avocado, who's running a land project. I would love to open the opportunity to see Giselle, who is sort of our head of science at R&D. I'd love to offer anybody the opportunity to raise your hand and we could bring you up. If you are a project and you are considering, trying to make decisions on blockchain in some relationship to Regen, do you have questions for the DAODAO team about like what you can do with it or a use case that you want to share just to get kind of their ideas, because we have sort of the brains of Jake and Noah here. So we could pick apart some use cases if there are anybody out here that wants to propose a use case here. Trying to look and see if anyone is interacting here.
Well, while people are coming up, I've got a use case.
Ooh.
And it's a really simple one. It's how do you make a proposal on the Regen chain? And so one of the things that we've added recently is just support for all these Cosmos SDK governance chains. There's not really a good UI for making a proposal on Regen Network, but now there is. So you can actually go to DAODAO and you can search for chains and you can find Regen, and you can just use the DAODAO UI to make a proposal on Regen. No code required, no command line required. So we're really excited to finally have some actual UI for making governance proposals on all the different Cosmos chains. That's one, but welcome to the new speaker.
Hello. So I have a probably fairly dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyways, and just because of it. So is there a way, or maybe could you say a few words of the relationship between Cosmos and Ethereum? And then also, is there tooling or something of DAODAO or some sort of the interface that can interact with, for instance, either Ethereum or Sol?
So that's a great question, and the answer is not yet, but it's definitely something that's like extremely high on our priorities. And I'm actually going to have an announcement in a couple of weeks that will help really unlock the governance possibilities of letting DAODAO interface with Ethereum. But that's we're gonna save that for a while, right? And it's definitely quite an engineering effort, but we do not currently support that. Is the answer.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Thanks for the clarification. And I mean, from what I've heard, and I'm by no means an expert when it comes to Cosmos, but like what is Cosmos? I think it's on L1, and like you said, swapping and bridging within Cosmos, but are there like just different L2s on Cosmos, or is it sort of thought of as an interoperability layer or some sort of that? Yeah, how does that all work, and what has been the relationship between Cosmos and ETH?
That's another great question, and Cosmos is it's many things. I like to think of it as the interchain. I think the interchain is a great word for what we're describing, because in many ways the interchain is an ecosystem of IBC connected blockchains. And so the thing that Cosmos is famous for is this technology called IBC, which stands for Inter Blockchain Communication Protocol. And it allows different sovereign L1s and eventually L2s to connect trustlessly without having to have like a business development partnership with Wormhole or whatever, right? So IBC is really amazing technology that powers a lot of the Cosmos and is even moving beyond the Cosmos. So Polkadot now supports IBC through Composable. There are teams working to bring IBC to Ethereum and various L2s. Union Labs and Polymer are two projects working on that, and there's some more on the way. And so IBC is just a technology that allows trustless cross-chain communication between any blockchain that supports IBC. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a Cosmos SDK-based chain for that to work. And so we're really seeing tremendous growth in IBC. In fact, it is the largest bridging protocol by volume of any of the bridging protocols, larger than Layer 0, larger than all these like VC-backed, like kind of multi-sig middlemen. And so, IBC is just an exciting part of Cosmos, and it is a separate ecosystem from Ethereum, if that's your question.
Yeah.
But maybe Noah has something to add.
Well, I think just to clarify, to put it into Ethereum terms, like every Cosmos chain at this point is an L1. And we don't really use that terminology because there's no notion of an L2 because every chain is sovereign. But the IBC, the interchain is kind of like a shortening of the internet of blockchains. And the IBC just lets tokens be sent across them basically permissionlessly. So any of the Cosmos or non-Cosmos, but IBC supporting blockchains can exchange tokens and other data like eventually NFTs and smart contract queries and executions and stuff. So yeah, there's no L2s at the moment. That doesn't really exist.
And the reason we describe DAODAO as interchain DAO tooling is because we leverage IBC at the heart of it. And so today with DAODAO, you can have a DAO on Juno Network, for example, that has accounts on Stargaze and on Osmosis. And you can actually do things on those accounts. You can call smart contracts. You can have a DAO on Juno that performs a swap on Osmosis, or a DAO on Juno that launches an NFT collection on Stargaze. So we really have, it's much richer than just bridging tokens. It's really cross-chain communication and things like interchain accounts and interchain queries. So, it's really exciting to see the expansion of IBC to other ecosystems, and I really do believe that someday IBC is going to connect all.
Yeah, totally. We're also interchain just because you can create your DAO natively on any of the chains we support. So you can create a DAO on one chain, like Regen, soon, and then you can interact with all the other chains. But you can also you choose where you want your DAO to natively live. So all the chains we support are like potential selections for your DAO's home. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and you said Stargaze, and just to throw out words that I don't really know what they mean. So Stargaze is an L2, L1, from my understanding. Yeah, I said L1. All of the different ones that are on and in the Cosmos interchain ecosystem are ones. I also heard Stargate. Is that something completely different? I think so, but I'm not entirely sure.
That is something completely different, yes. And you're correct. Stargaze is an L1, and it supports DAODAO, so.
Cool. Should we move on to Regen?
Yeah,
Avocado?
see, totally. Anthony, is that you?
It is me in the avocado flesh.
Oh, dude, I miss you. You're the man. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm more avocado than man now.
Aren't we all in our high desert ecosystem environments? I'm in SoCal, and you're in, what are you, in southern Italy still?
Yep, I'm on the west side of Sicily. We got it growing on. Very exciting. I think it's winter, so everything feels kind of dormant, but definitely feel the roots are growing deeper below the soil. So Regen and DAODAO I think is the most interesting intersection in crypto, in my opinion. So I'm really happy to join this space. And there's been refi experiments on DAODAO before. There are some battle scars. So I have like a 3-part question. The first being, what have we learned from those experiments? And we saw like a hostile token takeover of Aqua and Juno. And then, so that leads into the second point of like, will these like Regen DAOs on DAODAO be secured by the Regen token? Will that like create some more utility or security? And then the third is, how can we leverage like interchain accounts for DAO development for Regen projects? And Gitcoin is kind of like the leading quadratic funding right now, and I feel that there's a lot of room for improvement. So Dora Hacks has been kind of on my radar, but as I'm a non-developer, so I feel like maybe it's more geared towards developers in the Cosmos. So I'm wondering, what is their potential to utilize that quadratic funding space to develop more like Regen projects? So that's my 3-point plan.
Well, take your first question. DAODAO supports many different types of governance structures. So you can have a membership-based DAO, you can have an NFT-based DAO, or you can have a token-based DAO. I really recommend people start with membership-based DAOs. Tokens are hard, and I think that was a lot of the problem with the Aqua folks, is they kind of rushed to just have a token for the sake of having a token, and then didn't really think about how they were distributing that token, and it ultimately created problems.
Aqua is a special case because it's unclear whether or not they were legit or a scam, and most of the evidence points to the fact that they were scammers. So they didn't think very hard and didn't do their due diligence on setting up the tokens. Like, you could buy more on the marketplace than they gave their own team to like stake. So it was just like a mess, and it's a trap you can fall into. But like if you think about the math, you won't fall into it. So
refi full of degens is not really regen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so don't fall into that. And I think that
We
the
can help you
possibility.
to not fall into it. Ask us questions. If you're setting up a token DAO, like come to our Discord, ask us questions. We'll make sure you don't break yourself. Sorry, go on, Jake.
Yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, please, if you're seriously considering that, please come talk with us. I don't think token DAOs are bad, but they're definitely a lot more tricky to think about than membership DAOs or even NFT DAOs. The other part of your question is like, could you have a DAO that's secured by Regen Network? And the answer is yes. That would look like a sub DAO. And so I think that is probably a much larger conversation. And, I think that in many ways that could make sense for a lot of projects. And that's something we can think a lot more about in the future, is exactly what these different sub DAOs of Regen Network would look like. So that's definitely a possibility. Needs a lot more exploration. And another reason to pop in the Discord and come talk with us so we can start figuring out those kinds of things. And then finally, your last project was around like sort of like how are we going to support public goods? You brought up Gitcoin, huge fan of Gitcoin, friends with Scott and a lot of the Gitcoin people, love them. And I think a lot of people actually use DAODAO today for grants programs and things like that. That's one of the popular use cases of DAODAO, is like running these grants programs in a very transparent and accountable kind of way. And so we've already seen a lot of people leveraging DAODAO for that, and happy to share those DAOs with anyone who's interested in exploring that further. Another thing we support is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Coordinape, but Coordinape is this kind of retroactive compensation sort of style where it's like people do stuff and then they submit what they did and then they get rated effectively peer-to-peer by people in the DAO. And this is a really, really cool pattern that I think could be a really great way to like organize things like a Regen Ambassador program or potentially other like regeneration kind of efforts. I think that there's and we're talking with Will and Austin about different flavors of retroactive compensation, different modifications that we might make to that to like make it really, really work for a lot of exciting regeneration projects. And I guess the last part of your question is, DORA hacks and obviously I don't work for DORA hacks, so can't really say, but I do think that there's a lot of potential for things like quadratic funding in the regeneration space, and would encourage the Regen team to reach out to them. I think those are really awesome, very powerful tools that should be definitely leveraged.
Hey, just one thing to clarify. Is GrandStack completely chain agnostic? I was under the impression that GrandStack only works on Ethereum.
You mean the Gitcoin GrandStack?
Yeah.
Yeah, it only works on EVM right now. And I think at one point there was talk about getting like Gitcoin on Evmos or whatever, but we've not really seen that develop yet. Dora Hacks has been building, I think, a very similar set of tools with relation to quadratic funding and stuff, and that works with Cosmos chains today. So hopefully we'll see a lot more development of that kind of stuff. And frankly, this is stuff I really care about. So I'd love to, obviously we're quite busy with our roadmap at DAODAO, but at some point we'd love to dive into things like quadratic funding and stuff as well. Probably not in the near time frame, but there are definitely things that interest us.
Is there something on Cosmos regarding quadratic funding? I know on NIA there's something, on Solana there's something, besides Gitcoin.
Yeah, the quadratic funding on Cosmos is this group called DORA Hacks, DORA Hacks. So search for them, and they're doing an amazing job. And yeah, I'd really love to see them start supporting like regenerative agriculture projects. I think that would be a really great thing. So maybe some regen folks can go talk with them.
Oh, perfect. I didn't put that together.
So Dora Hacks, thank you so much. We are in touch with Dora Hacks. I think we'll get to jam with them at Ethanver. Also, for the record, we ran a quadratic funding pilot in partnership with the USDA using CosmWasm in 2019. So there's work happening in OpenTeam, continued work happening in OpenTeam, and Jake sat down with the director of that program, Dorn, at the last Regen community gathering. So I think there is a direct line of sight actually for institutional adoption of quadratic funding mechanisms built in CosmWasm using DAODAO. So I think that's a vision, that's a future to kind of hold in mind and keep working on together. So I think we're all really excited. I've been frustrated about and tried really hard to get GrantStack and Gitcoin supported in the Cosmos ecosystem, as Jake said, with Evmos and other sort of EVM deployments in the Cosmos ecosystem. So there has been a lot of attempts, and Regen has been was an early and big supporter in the Gitcoin ecosystem. But right now, I think probably the focus is going to be on building native quadratic funding tooling that can be cheaply and broadly accessible through the interchain ecosystem is probably the way that this is going to go down. Although, always would be stoked if it can just happen through GrantStacks. There's no need to reinvent wheels. But DoraHacks is doing great work. So between those two options and the sort of previous line of research that happened, and I think that code is floating around somewhere. So if someone wants to dig up, that was the Cambium team actually that built the quadratic funding smart contract in CosmWasm. So anyway, hopefully that's all helpful sort of context from back in the day.
Welcome up here this morning, Gregory. I'm wondering if maybe whoever has the host powers here, maybe we could bring up Giselle, who I'm not sure if you'll be willing to or not. But I would be interested in hearing from Gregory's perspective and Giselle's perspective, and Will, if Will wants to come up as well, about some of the ways in which the crediting participants in Regen, which are on the ground projects doing the work, scientists creating the scientific methodologies, communities making group decisions. I'd love to hear sort of like the ways that we think those groups in particular that are on the eco-crediting origination side might be able to use DAODAO, keeping in mind that a lot of them are currently using the discussion platform Hilo, and there has been some loose rumors of potentially being able to sort of combine Hilo and DAODAO, so that those communities that are already having discussions in Regen might be able to implement a lot of their decisions on chain using DAODAO, while still having some of their discussions in their community spaces. So I'd love to just kind of hear some of your thoughts, Will and Gregory, about some of these like existing folks that maybe can start using some of those tools for like the real world projects on the ground.
Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry, I still got a little bit of a flu here. So I think that, there's a number of different ways that this is going to show up. I think we tend to talk a lot about nested governance, which I think is similar thinking to what Jake is talking about, where you can have like DAOs and sub DAOs and kind of all the way down. The question is who needs to govern what. So I think this gets discussed a lot around governing specific credit classes, right? Where I think that the intention is to use DAODAO to actually administer and govern specific credit classes. And also, if you think of a registry as a family of credit classes, right? A bunch of credit classes that are all adhering to a set of standards and approaches and norms. You can sort of see how this nested governance approach using DAODAO can be quite exciting, where you can kind of have an assembly of councils or DAOs that are governing the rules for specific eco-crediting issuance. right, at a couple of different layers. And that can be flexible, and people can sort of like move in and out of those processes. So that's at the kind of like registry level, again, which is governing the rules and norms for people to issue credits so that buyers have assurance that those credits represent real ecological impact. So again, that's governing things like scientific standards or even data schemas or governing lists of verified actors that play specific roles. So I'll pause there because that's the first use case, concrete use case that I think is worth calling out, and see if Will has anything to chime in on.
Sure, yeah, thanks everyone. I guess maybe I'll take a quick like high level tangent to say that Jake and I were in a shared space on Calm Tech facilitated by Case, and the idea of Calm Tech is that the like technology recedes into the background and can be in service to what people and communities just want to be focused on. And a lot of tech out in the world is not at all calm. It's anxiety inducing and centers itself. And I think one of the things that I love about the ethos of DAODAO is, Jake, you introduced it as like this Lego kit where there's all these different building blocks. It's already highly modular, and I think it's just going to continue to be more so. So that way, the governance patterns that people are using on chain can reflect the social agreements they have in their communities instead of being instead of the technology forcing social patterns that might not at all match what those communities are doing. So the already as far as on the ground projects, I guess I just say we have a number of existing community staking DAOs that have received locked regen grants and are participating in governance in various ways. And I think that DAODAO will enable them to kind of considerably up level how they're participating in the larger ecosystem, and then also within their own initiatives. This plastic waste project was already named Chata Fisha is the name of that group, and there's we have a bunch of existing community thinking DAOs from Howard and Colshan Carbon Trust, who developed a biochar methodology to kind of there's some smallholder farmer groups in India and kind of in a number of different locations at this point. And we're the Chatafisha pilot is the first one that we're launching, and we want to do it quickly and iteratively. So we've been having calls each week with them, and the idea there is to learn as much as we can, say over the next couple months, and then roll it out to the next tier of community staking DAOs, and do the same thing there. So I guess I won't get too far into potential use cases at this moment, but just to say that the idea is to have this highly iterative approach where we trial something, see what we learn, and then roll it out to more community members.
Cool. Then the last, I think that concretely, the last thing that there's a million things that I think this is going to start to get used for, but I also think you're going to see DAODAO being used to start to do things like govern basket standards, right? And so in Regen Network, in the hierarchy of things, you have credit issuance that happens at the eco credit level. And these are sort of non-fungible batches of tokens that represent ecological health impact. But in order for those to then become fungible, liquid, tradable instruments, we use something called a basket. And a basket allows you to define criteria of likeness to say that these tokens are all similar enough that they could be swapped between each other on a one-to-one basis. Like maybe there's a unit of carbon, right? And that unit of it's ag carbon, for instance, and the standards are robust enough or similar enough that it can be thought of as interchangeable. But that decision, that's a very interesting decision. And who makes that decision? I actually think that is the exact type of parameter and exact type of feature which is really fantastic to be able to bring a group together and say, hey, this group of businesses has decided that all of these eco credits are fungible, and so therefore there's a basket, and it is called, the DAODAO basket, or whatever, DAODAO01, Regen, whatever the name is. A group of people can come together and define that kind of like fungibility standard to then, be able to make that happen, make liquidity happen, move things cross-chain, move things to osmosis, move things into lending protocols. It helps instrument and govern the the pathway towards financialization in a responsible, transparent way. So I think that's another place, in addition to sort of like registry governance, this sort of like market norms governance is another place where I expect to see DAO tools being used heavily by the Regen community.
Yeah, and you touched on, I think, a really key word, which is transparency. And the great thing about what we're building is it allows for really transparent, like, kind of decision making. And so we support these really rich text proposals, and they can have tables and links and images, and that's really important for the sort of the reporting and the transparency of all this, right? And so the idea that we could like leverage these tools to like you can see the rationale of each of these decisions, right? And or in terms of like eco credit issuance, you can see sort of the documentation that was like submitted, and like these we're just really at the start of, I think, something really interesting where we can have this sort of like on-chain reporting and the benefits of transparency that come from that. So you can not just see, oh, well, a bunch of credits were issued. Like we know who issued them, but we don't really know why. And we can show the why. We can show the rationale. We can show the data. We can show what was submitted for reports. And so, I think that's a huge advantage of this like digital first like governance tooling, is that you can follow the provenance and information and reporting of all these different decisions.
I think that's going to be a very exciting thing when there is a full use case of the whole life cycle of a credit design and project design and decision making kind of all used with DAODAO. I think it's going to be really exciting when the foundations endowment recipients are able to receive Regen and make all of their governance decisions in one place. I think a lot of the kind of like challenge that I think a lot of projects have, and I don't know that this is necessarily unique to Regen, but it definitely feels pretty critical in Regen, is just different groups are having different discussions on different platforms and in different places. And it is, even when you know where to look, kind of hard to follow all the bits and pieces of that. And sometimes there isn't, if a decision for a credit standard was kind of like instituted on chain, it's not always the easiest thing to know where to look for who was involved with that decision or the why of that decision, and really follow that entire decision making life cycle. So it does feel like the DAODAO tooling in a lot of ways is going to be like a connective tissue layer. And Jake, I know we've talked about this a little bit just, as friends, but, allowing the Regen Network community to really focus on its mission, which is actually implementing climate change and climate science on the ground, and allowing, the partnership with DAODAO to be a specialization around DAO tooling and decision-making tooling and governance it's sort of like a marriage of two different, viewpoints that are really both trying to work towards making the world a better place and giving people the autonomy to be the decision makers in their own design and development processes, in their own community decision making processes, and making that decision making smooth, simple, easy, transparent, accessible, so that others can participate and others can engage. Really feels like it could be this moment that's coming where finally the way in which people want to interact with, the regen tools and the way that they want to design and run their organizations, and they want to implement, tree planting or whatever the impact is on the ground, that it's all actually going to have the right bits and pieces for it to not just be a bifurcated conversation, but be something that actually really fuels communities being able to do more work faster in a way that empowers them. So I'm just like really excited to see all the use cases that happen. And I think it's definitely, noting that we're kind of coming up on the top of the hour. Those of us on the documentation project want to hear from the community. We want to encourage you to go and kind of take a peek at DAODAO to think about how the heck you're going to use all of this amazing tooling, because there's like a lot of features in there, and to reach out and let us know, I think I'm definitely going to use these particular things. Or when we launch more documents, let us know that there's a feature you tried to use where there isn't a document. Because we want to really start to understand and profile the users that are going to be coming through Regen and be able to have the tooling, have the training, and have the support for users being able to onboard in a quick and easy way, where we can honestly all work together to help them. Because it's going to be our collective knowledge that makes the onboarding experience easy for people. So with that, with the 1 minute left, maybe I'll just switch back to Jake and Noah, our guests, and thank you for coming today, and give you kind of one last opportunity to tell folks, where the heck do you find DAODAO? And what are you most excited about the potential marriage here between DAODAO and Regen, about what it's going to unlock or uplift in the world?
Great. You can find DAODAO on DAODAO.zone, DAODAO.zone. And we encourage you to join our Discord. If you don't know how to use the tool, like a great way to start is like just think about what you want to do and tell us. And in many ways we love it when users tell us what they want to do, so that really helps guide our roadmap. So if you have a use case or there's something that you'd like to be able to do, chances are we already support it. But it's really great to hear from folks about what they're trying to use DAO tooling for and what goals they're trying to achieve. So like any sort of requirements or use cases you've got, like hop in the DAODAO Discord and let us know. You can find DAODAO on Twitter. It's linked to from my profile and from Noah's profile. And yeah, please come join the DAODAO community and let us know what you think, and let us know what you're looking to do. That really helps us a lot. And I'm stoked to see some actual like awesome real world applications of using this governance tooling. Noah, you got anything to add?
Yeah, no, you said it. Thanks for having us. This is super awesome. Whenever we have a call with Regen internally, our team is just like, yes, we can't wait. So it's awesome that this is finally happening. Just super stoked to start catering to, real normal humans that hopefully I'll be able to meet in person and work on projects about the world. Like we have not done that yet. And we've wanted to since the beginning. That's what we've been waiting for. So this is just so awesome.
Well, big thank you to the DAODAO team for becoming friends with Regen this year. We really appreciate all of you on your team, and all of your ingenuity. I feel like it's going to really unlock a lot of amazing opportunity for people to be creative together. Regen community, remember, we are users of DAODAO, or new users of DAODAO, and they want to hear from us about what is missing or what we need. So it's a real open door opportunity for us to co-create. So do not be shy. Go in their Discord, hit them up on Twitter, these guys really care the way that we really care. And that's what is actually probably the best part about all of this. So thank you to everyone who tuned in this morning. We will keep giving you updates on the network upgrade in Commonwealth. So there is a thread there. I do every 2 weeks kind of give people a technical update. We'll keep kind of piping out on community calls and Twitter about where it's at. In order for us to fully launch DAODAO, we need the COSM-WASM activated. So we are chipping away behind the scenes on those requirements, and there will be a day very soon, maybe a month or hopefully no more than 6 weeks, where everything finally clicks into place and we get to play around with our Regen wallets on DAODAO, which is going to be fucking great. So thank you all for tuning in this morning. We really appreciate your attendance, and thank you to the DAODAO team. Looking forward to getting some docs in place and being able to figure out how we're going to onboard and resource community members, because it is coming down the pipeline way faster than we're probably prepared for it, like usual. So enjoy your days, y'all, and thank you everyone for attending today.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks. Later all.
Bye, y'all.